I used to be a physics genius. Once, on my way to receive an award to save my wife, I got hit on the head by a car. After I woke up, I found I couldn't understand my own manuscript. Sophia took care of me attentively. She gave me the courage to start living again. Later, there was a time I forgot to bring my ID on my way home. I unexpectedly discovered Sophia having an inappropriate relationship with her university professor on our wedding bed. She said, "Your husband is slow to react now. He notices nothing." During my hospital stay, Ethan told everyone his dad is a university professor. Later, I realized Sophia and Ethan both thought I was a burden. I decided to go abroad for a surgery with only a 30% success rate. Unexpectedly, as soon as I left, Sophia eagerly started looking for me. Meanwhile, Ethan, lying on the hospital bed, weakly called for me to come home. "Isn't a hotel okay? It has to be here. What if someone finds out?" Women speak in a casual tone, with a hint of flirtation. "Alexander doesn't seem very bright right now. He probably won't notice. I want to be with you in the place where Sophia usually rests." The man's tone is filled with disdain. I stand by the wall next to the master bedroom door. I listen to Sophia and another man being intimate on our wedding bed. My heart is completely calm. There is no change in my facial expression. I hear that man say affectionately, "Sophia, give me a child." Sophia was just tender and loving. Upon hearing this, her tone immediately turns cold, and then he says excitedly, "Then we will definitely get a divorce and then be together with me. I will always treat you well." His tone is filled with anticipation, as if he has already seen a bright future. Sophia, after hearing this, immediately pushes him away from herself. "Benjamin, I'm not going to divorce Alexander. Pack your things. Leave my house." Benjamin's voice has changed. He said anxiously, "Is it just because he saved you? You have to sacrifice your whole life for that." Sophia didn't say anything. "Hurry up and put on your clothes." At this moment, I could finally move my body. I took a step forward. Before they came out, I hid in the utility room. "Don't come to my house again. I can't let Alexander find out." I waited for them to walk out the villa door. Only then did I slowly realize what I had just heard. I was supposed to go to the hospital for a checkup today, but I forgot to bring my ID, so I went back home to get it. I didn't expect that as soon as I walked in, I saw my wife with Benjamin. Last time Sophia introduced him, she said he was her friend, a young university teacher. Very promising. He was right. I do seem a bit foolish right now. 6 years ago, I was a genius in physics. By the age of 24, I had almost won all the domestic awards. I had just been married to Sophia for less than a month. I became the youngest recipient in the history of the American Physical Society Award. On my way to receive the award, I got into a car accident. When I woke up, I found that I could no longer understand the manuscripts I had written before. Brain hemorrhage made my thinking sluggish. My reactions were also slower. My movements were not as agile as before. I went from being a genius to an ordinary person, even worse than an ordinary person. If the hemorrhage shifts, I could die suddenly at any time. At that time, the car was actually aimed at Sophia. I wanted to pull her away, who was frozen in shock. According to my calculations, neither of us would have been hit, but Sophia pushed me away due to a reflex. As a result, I was dragged under the car. Sophia took care of me day and night in the hospital for a whole month. She saved me from thoughts of suicide. Her eyes are swollen like peaches. She cried and said to me, "Husband, I really can't live without you. Although you have lost your physical health, but you still have me. We will definitely be very, very happy. Trust me." Gradually, I no longer desperately calculate those complex formulas, nor do I torment myself to study those manuscripts. At least there is someone who needs me. I can't just fall down like this. For 6 years, Sophia and I became the model couple in everyone's eyes. She wholeheartedly helped me run the company. Sophia has always been by her husband's side. She helped him through the difficult times in life. This touching story was made into a promotional film. It moved countless people. It brought tears to the eyes of people across the nation. The company's stock price also surged as a result. Business is booming. Seeing all this, I couldn't help but shed tears. I unknowingly walked to the bookshelf in the corner of the storage room. It was covered in a thick layer of dust. Most of the books on the shelf were about physics. There were also drafts I had written in the past. Those trophies were tossed in a cardboard box on the floor. They were covered in dust. They looked like a pile of scrap metal, just like me. The alarm clock rang precisely at 3 o'clock. It made a ringing sound. Mrs. Johnson is on leave today. I have to go to school to pick up my son. I quickly changed my clothes. After freshening up, I took a taxi to the elementary school gate. I can't be late. I feel particularly uncomfortable when there are too many people. I watched the parents at the school gate pick up their children one by one. But I never waited for Ethan. I was getting more and more anxious. Could it be that I missed him, but I had been staring at the school gate the whole time? I didn't even blink. His teacher said Ethan had left a long time ago. I tried to call his children's watch, but no one answered. I had to slowly search along the small paths around, until the sky darkened, suddenly, with a loud smack. A fruit pit hit me. I looked in the direction. Ethan was in his school uniform, sitting by the roadside eating something. Food wrappers were piled up at his feet. I thought to myself, he doesn't answer the phone, runs around everywhere, and eats recklessly. You should know. Ethan is just like me. We both have severe food allergies. You know how worried Dad is. He's been looking for you all afternoon. His voice is hoarse. Yet Ethan seems completely unconcerned. He gets up and walks ahead by himself. I didn't ask you to pick me up. If someone sees you, that would be so embarrassing. It looks particularly shabby. I do everything so slowly. It makes me seem clumsy. I saw the impatience reflected in Ethan's eyes. I suddenly realized, my son actually doesn't need me. The words on the tip of my tongue, I could no longer say them. Ethan dragged his tired body home. He ran upstairs excitedly to find his mom. I received her call. Her voice was still so gentle. What did the doctor say today? Is there any improvement? I'm working overtime tonight. I won't be back for dinner. You take care and eat well. Honey, don't forget to think of me, okay? She didn't wait for me to finish, and just hung up the phone. She thinks my reaction is too slow, not even willing to wait a few seconds for me to respond. No matter how late it was before, she would always come back for dinner. The stomach issue she developed while doing research worsened after the car accident. Sophia is always worried. She insists on watching me eat. Since last year, she has become busier and busier. She no longer rushes back from the company at noon. She might not even have dinner at home. At first, I was quite angry, but every time I see her come home tired, all I feel is heartache. Ethan got angry with me after washing up. It's all your fault. Mom doesn't come home anymore. Then he said, I'm going to the amusement park tomorrow. I held my forehead and said, take him when you have time. Ethan slammed the door shut. He muttered, it's not like I'm going with you. At night, I lay on the sofa in the living room. My eyes stayed wide open. I waited for her to come back until dawn, but she still didn't come home. The next morning, as soon as I heard the honking, I rushed downstairs. I was eager to see her immediately. I wanted to ask her if she really didn't love me anymore. But when I opened the door, I saw two people standing there. Brother Alexander, today is the weekend. I'm here to take Zaya Ojing out to play, and I'll drop Sophia back home on the way. You would not welcome me, right? Benjamin smiles gently. He wears a pair of frameless glasses on his nose. He looks both intelligent and scholarly. Ethan runs out with his short legs, excitedly shouting, Uncle Benjamin, you finally came. Benjamin smiles and picks him up. No, please come in. I pretended not to notice that they were holding hands just now. Honey, I was quite tired from doing business last night. I just happened to run into Benjamin on the way. Don't think too much about it, seeing my bad mood. Sophia hugged my waist from behind. I calmly removed her hands. At the same time, I noticed a flash of unhidden jealousy and resentment on Benjamin's face behind me. Let's have breakfast first. The person serving the dishes is not Mrs. Johnson. I turned to look at Sophia. Sophia was taking off her coat. She noticed me looking at her. She casually said, Oh, Mrs. Johnson almost let Ethan get lost yesterday. I fired her, she continued. Mrs. Smith was introduced by Benjamin. You can rest assured. She's quite reliable. Benjamin was helping to serve congee next to Sophia and her son. The three of them looked more like a family. I agreed to Mrs. Johnson's leave. "Why didn't you ask me first?" Sophia said to me with a frown. "It's just a nanny. You really need to be like this. I already gave her 2 extra months' salary. Is that really necessary? Mrs. Johnson has been taking care of me since I was a child, like she was treating her own son. She was supposed to go home to take care of her grandson, but because I had an accident, she was worried. That's why she decided to stay. She is very meticulous about my diet every day, taking care of everything meticulously." I looked at the glutinous rice balls and salty porridge on the table. I found that these things are not good for the stomach. Sophia was completely oblivious. She was happily chatting with Benjamin. I felt that this scene was quite uncomfortable, so I put down the spoon. I stood up and walked upstairs. "Brother Alexander, are you angry? Did I come at a bad time? Did I interrupt you?" Benjamin seemed a bit nervous. I had my back to them. I heard Sophia suddenly say, "Ignore him. His temper has been getting weirder lately. You take Xiao Jing out for a walk first." Not long after, Sophia pushed the door and walked in. "You're giving me a hard time over a nanny. I'm the one paying the salary. I can hire whoever I want. I didn't blame you for losing Ethan. Can you please let me worry a little less? I'll be on a business trip for a few days. Just take a moment to calm down." Sophia packed her luggage. Just as she was about to leave, I called out to her, "Sophia." Yes, I hadn't finished speaking. Suddenly, I felt a sharp pain in my stomach. The pain was so intense I couldn't stand up straight. "My stomach hurts. Can you stay with me today?" Sophia said without looking back. "Stop guessing. I'm going to take care of serious business." 2 days later, in the middle of the night, I was awakened by pain again. I picked up my phone to see what Sophia was doing. While scrolling through my social media, I suddenly saw a photo of my wife from behind. I zoomed in on the picture to take a closer look. I noticed she was wearing a bracelet on her wrist. This made me sure that the person was Sophia. Standing next to her was Benjamin. I also noticed she wasn't wearing a wedding ring on her hand. They were at the mountaintop waiting to watch the sunrise. The caption read, "With a loved one by my side." I used to ask Sophia to go hiking with me. She always said she was too tired. She was unwilling to go. I liked this post on Moments. Not long after, my phone rang several times. It was a message from Benjamin. He sent many intimate photos of my wife. I started to feel more and more dizzy. Finally, everything went black before my eyes. I fainted. When I woke up again, it was already bright outside. My son Ethan was dragging a chair downstairs. It made a piercing sound. Mrs. Smith quickly reminded him, "Your dad hasn't been feeling well lately. Be a little quieter." But Ethan deliberately made it louder. He also complained, "Other people's dads are smart and capable. Yours is stupid and weak." "That's not my dad." Mrs. Smith asked with a smile, "So do you wish Mr. Benjamin could be your dad?" "I quite like Uncle Benjamin." After Mrs. Smith and Ethan went out, I felt my legs go weak as I went downstairs. I just collapsed. I opened my eyes again. What I saw was the familiar hospital ward. "Alexander, you're awake." The one speaking is my friend Christopher, whom I've known since childhood. "I went to look for you. As soon as I entered, I saw you lying on the floor. You were burning up. How did you end up like this? The doctor said you not only have the flu and a fever, you also have a stomach ulcer. There's hardly a part of you that's well." As Christopher spoke, he poured me a glass of water. Seeing him still so talkative, I felt much more at ease. He asked me, "What brought you to me?" I took the glass of water. Curiously, I asked him, "You came all the way to my home. It must be something urgent, right?" Christopher put away his smile. He took out a stack of documents. He said seriously, "This is about the hemorrhage in your brain. There are successful cases abroad. The hematoma can be completely removed through surgery. Everything has returned to normal." I seemed to see hope in life again. "Hurry and reach out to catch it." But Christopher stopped my hand. He said seriously, "But the location of your hematoma is too dangerous. A moment's inattention could lead to brain death. The success rate of the surgery is less than 30%. I lowered my head and said, "Help me make an appointment with the doctor. I will transfer the money to you later." Christopher stood up. He asked, "Are you serious? If you really want to do this, the Research Institute will arrange a private plane to take you there." He walked back and forth in the ward. Frowning, he said, "This matter is a bit strange." Then he recalled, "There was this kind of surgery 6 years ago, but the success rate was even lower at that time. You were worried about your siblings' feelings, so you didn't agree. Now you have a wife and children. How can I bear to leave them? I put down the materials in my hands. I've already made up my mind. I must undergo this surgery." Upon hearing his words, I gave a wry smile. "Go ahead. Without me, they would be better off." Christopher said nothing more. He didn't persuade me to give up either. As someone who studies physics as well, he understands the transition from a prodigy to an ordinary person. No longer being able to pursue ideals is painful. That feeling is almost like death. I was just about to fall asleep when I heard Sophia's voice. She rushed in. She grabbed my hand. She looked me up and down. Her tone was filled with worry. "I've only been gone for a few days. How did you end up like this?" She continued, "Honey, I won't go far away again. I'll go back and personally make you some nourishing soup. What do you think? I can feel this long-lost care." But I can't smile at all. Perhaps she hasn't even noticed the guilt and unease on her face. "Thank you. My wife, you are by my side. I feel so much better." Sophia agreed readily. Not even 10 minutes passed. She received a phone call. She picked up her bag and prepared to leave. "I have something urgent to attend to. The soup is already being cooked by the nanny. It will be delivered later. Can you stay with me for one last day?" I tried hard to get up. I wanted to hold her hand, but she avoided me. Sophia was getting a bit impatient. "Don't pressure me with morals. You can't expect me to just accompany you without doing anything. Just one day. Can you just stay with me for one day?" I looked at her pleadingly. As long as she is willing to stay tonight, I would forgive her. Sophia looked at me quietly. Time passed second by second. Finally, Sophia's expression softened slightly. Her demeanor became gentle. But just then, the phone suddenly rang. "I heard you were hospitalized. You think this will keep her by your side? You believe it? All I need to do is make a call. She will leave." After reading the text message, I smiled wryly and shook my head. "Forget it. Let's leave it at that. Sophia has been wronged all these years taking care of me, this useless person. We can say we had some feelings for each other. From now on, let's go our separate ways. We'll be unrelated to each other." The next day, Sophia didn't come. She said she had a meeting. Alexander sat there. He looked a bit lonely. Benjamin pushed the door open and walked in slowly. Looking at him, I said, "Alexander, look at how you are now. It's really heartbreaking." His expression was completely different from his usual gentleness. "It looks gloomy. You received the photo I sent, right? If you know what's good for you, hurry up and get a divorce. You can't do it anymore. Stop thinking you're still the genius you once were." Benjamin leaned against the sofa in the ward, with his legs crossed. He said, "You used to think highly of yourself. As soon as you arrived at school, the teachers and classmates all surrounded you. My grades compared to yours are simply not worth mentioning. You know how much I dislike you. God has eyes. Now you've turned into this. It's really funny. I don't understand what he's saying." Benjamin looked at me with a puzzled expression. His face immediately darkened. He bent down close to me. Benjamin pressed down on the Roman IV tube, causing the blood to flow back. He stood next to the red Roman IV tube, coldly said to Alexander, "What, Alexander? Don't you remember me? An ordinary person. Take a closer look. He seems to be my deskmate from 6th grade. We were classmates for only 1 year. After that, I skipped a grade and went to high school, so I really don't have much impression of him. You remember childhood events so clearly. Is it because you never beat me? That's why you still remember?" I smiled and replied to him. Benjamin stood up, slowly tidying up his clothes. "Now I am a teacher at a university, and you, once a genius, can only stay at home, living off others. Am I really not better than you, so you want to take my wife away?" I looked up, calmly looking at him. "Your wife? No one wants to live with an ordinary and boring person. Sophia said she has long lost feelings for you. Your son seems to prefer me more. You might as well take the initiative to propose a divorce. I can still give you some money, let you spend your old age in a nursing home. Don't be unappreciative. After Benjamin left, I received a notification from Ethan's school's official account. The content is about the campus open day. Students and parents are required to come to the school for the event. The photos and videos taken by the photographer have been released. Benjamin is wearing a black long coat. He is playing a parent-child puzzle game with Ethan. Sophia is cheering for them from the side. In the video, after Ethan won first place, he happily hugged Benjamin. Dad is awesome. He is pulling Benjamin, introducing his dad to the other kids one by one. His face is full of pride. My dad is a university teacher. He's really impressive, stronger than our teachers. But I remember Ethan has never been to the hospital. After I was discharged, I returned home alone. As soon as I entered, I saw Mrs. Smith holding several garbage bags. It seems she is going out to take out the trash. I asked her, "What are these?" Mr. Benjamin asked me to clean the storage room carefully. These are the trash cleared out from inside. Mrs. Smith's eyes are filled with contempt. She thinks I have no ability. My instincts tell me that things are not good. I immediately grabbed the trash bag. Shredded paper is scattered everywhere. Oh my, how hard must this be to clean up? What are you doing? I didn't hear Mrs. Smith shouting. I only saw shredded paper scattered on the floor. That is the effort I've put in over the past decade. There are drafts from my first physics competition in elementary school. There are also handwritten formulas that helped me win awards. These sheets were given to me by Sophia. They have leaf patterns printed on them. She said to use these papers for calculations. It's like she has always been with me. I turned and walked into the study. I found the trophy for the national physics competition that I gave to Sophia in high school. It was also missing. It turns out the place where the trophy was kept. There is a photo of the sunrise they watched with Benjamin last time. The sunrise in the photo is incredibly vibrant. I asked Mrs. Smith, "What is going on?" "Sophia has returned," she said. "I'm not clear on what's happening either. As soon as Alexander came back, he got angry with me and made a mess with the trash. Sophia noticed that I looked unwell. That's when she saw what the scraps on the floor were. She didn't dare to look at me. She turned and shouted at Mrs. Smith. Didn't I say not to touch the books in the storage room? Teacher Benjamin specifically asked me to clean it up. He said it wouldn't be used anyway. Don't take up space." Mrs. Smith said somewhat reluctantly. I coldly replied, "It seems the male head of the household is already Benjamin." Sophia's expression changed. She immediately told Mrs. Smith to pack her things and leave. She said to her husband, "Don't be angry anymore. I've already let her go." Sophia understands the importance of those things to me. I've been really busy lately. I haven't had time to visit you in the hospital, but I've been messaging you every day. She was pressed tightly against my chest. Her hands were constantly roaming over my body. I ignored her hints. I firmly pushed her away from me. In 7 days, I'll be boarding a flight abroad. Sophia was stunned. She didn't expect me to refuse. After all, it's been a long time since we've had a marital life. You're really angry. It's not like I tore it. Why are you getting mad at me? She laughed again. I picked up the tools and started cleaning up the manuscripts on the floor. I said calmly, "Benjamin is the one you brought home." Sophia seemed to have hit a nerve. She frowned. "Can you please stop talking? It was just a kind gesture. Why have you become so negative?" She kicked the manuscripts I had just organized. "Say it, these useless things. Keeping them just takes up space." I was stunned. She really seemed indifferent. I didn't say anything more. That night, I slept alone in the guest room. This was our first time sleeping in separate rooms at home. 2 days later, I returned home after finishing my visa. As soon as I entered the door, I felt that the house was particularly quiet. On the rectangular dining table were flowers and candles. The warm yellow light shone on the exquisite dishes. Sophia was wearing a champagne-colored dress. She slowly walked down the stairs. Time had left no marks on her. Instead, it made her even more charming. "Happy anniversary. You like it, dear. I know you don't like crowded places. So I specially invited the restaurant's chef to cook at home." Sophia smiled happily. Ethan was sent to his grandmother's house. He won't be back tonight. The anniversary is on the weekend. That day happened to be when I was going abroad. because my husband wasn't very happy, so we celebrated a few days earlier. She spoke as she approached me. She lowered her head and carefully put a Breguet watch on my wrist. Then she tucked her hand into my palm. Smiling, she said, "Your hands are really beautiful. This item is too precious. Even though I'm not very familiar with luxury goods, I've heard of its value. I put in a lot of effort to buy this. As long as you like it, that's enough." We sat facing each other. The atmosphere was very warm. It was completely different from the tense feeling a few days ago. It felt like an ordinary loving couple. If it weren't for Benjamin, would we be able to stay happy forever? "I accidentally saw an English email in your inbox today. What was that about? What happened there?" Sophia poured the red wine while giving me a sharp look. "I'm trying hard to calm myself down. Go ahead." "A few days ago, I looked at a travel guide. It might be a message from the travel agency over there. Did you see it? I'm both afraid she will find out, and I secretly have some expectations. If she knew I was going to undergo a very high-risk surgery, would she worry about me?" Sophia said with a smile. "How could I possibly snoop on your email? Fortunately, it wasn't a message from an outside lover. She hasn't gone out to relax for a long time. When the company gets less busy, she'll go with me. Does she still care about my fidelity to marriage?" The phone suddenly vibrated. It broke the originally warm atmosphere. Sophia hesitated and looked at me. She whispered, "It's nothing. You carry on with what you're doing." I took a sip of red wine. It tasted particularly bitter. She walked upstairs while answering the phone. Benjamin's voice reached my ears. "Sophia, I'm home alone. I have a bad headache." It wasn't long. Sophia changed her clothes. She went downstairs with her bag. "Benjamin is sick. I came back after taking him to the hospital. He's home alone. I really can't stop worrying, but we're just friends. Don't overthink it." Sophia just left. My phone rang right after. The message said, "Do you like that watch?" I picked it out. "Oh, I forgot Alexander is out of touch with reality. He might not understand these ordinary things. Sophia plans to buy me a gift. She also picked out something to match. I think it suits you well. It won't be a waste." I hadn't even waited for him to finish speaking before I hung up the phone. Benjamin sent another picture. It's Sophia's pregnancy checkup form. I remembered what I heard that day. Sophia is willing to have a child for him. This means she is willing to marry him. Then I should leave as well. Sophia still hasn't returned by evening. The next morning, I boarded the flight to Europe early. Upon arrival, I went straight to the hospital. I had to undergo many tests every day, and I had to keep receiving Roman IV fluids and taking medication. This was to keep my body in the best condition before surgery. 3 months later, I checked into a beautiful sanatorium in Europe. "Are you really not going to see Sophia?" Christopher pushed me forward under the sunlight. Ethan was still lying in the hospital. He almost didn't make it. As soon as Christopher came in, he couldn't stop talking. He told me, after I left. Sophia was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. She was looking for me everywhere. She even held a press conference. She pleaded with the media to help find her husband. The media and netizens were moved by Sophia's genuine feelings. Many joined the search party. Not long after, the competitor exposed intimate photos of Sophia and Benjamin in front of the obstetrics and gynecology clinic. Their relationship quickly became public. Netizens who previously felt sorry for Sophia changed their attitudes. They began to criticize her fiercely. This led to a significant drop in the company's stock price. The university where Benjamin is employed also suspended him for inappropriate behavior. They directly put him on leave. Sophia was overwhelmed with work. Ethan was left at home without anyone to take care of him. He accidentally ate peanuts, which caused him to go into shock. It was later discovered that Mrs. Smith had given him a sandwich containing peanut butter. Sophia had someone beat her up. Then she was kicked out of her home. This incident was exposed by the media. Her already poor reputation became even worse. What surprised me was that, after Ethan almost had an accident, Sophia publicly apologized to me. Sophia's eyes were red in front of the camera. Her face was pale. Her hair was also a bit messy. She leaned against the bedside, holding weak Ethan tightly. "Speak softly, Alexander. I don't care about freedom. I just hope you can come back. I and the children will always wait for you." Ethan choked up. At that moment, he truly understood how precious his father's concern had been. "Dad, I want Dad. Wah wah wah. No need." I pushed my wheelchair to the lake by myself. The surgery went surprisingly smoothly. Although I was in a coma for a full 10 days, I almost didn't wake up. Christopher, in a moment of panic, told the whole research institute the news. Even the mentor, who is over 70, hurriedly came with his fellow students. He cried and said he wanted to see me one last time. It was only after I woke up that they felt relieved to return home. Waking up from a sleep, seeing the physics formulas again, it felt as warm as meeting an old friend. I understood that the surgery was indeed successful. Looking at the people around me who were happy and worried for me, I feel as if I have been reborn. A year later, I returned to work at the Research Institute in my home country with new research findings. The first academic lecture after returning home attracted widespread attention. The media that reported on the fall of the genius physicist 5 years ago came rushing back. Assistant Emily excitedly read out the news headline: "The genius physicist returns once again, new breakthroughs in fundamental physics research." But when he saw the previous reports, the smile on his face slowly faded away. "Professor Alexander, you are really famous now. Everyone is talking about your experiences. They say it's a legend. I really didn't expect you to have gone through so many difficulties before. Those 5 years must have been tough." Emily's expression slowly became a bit sad. She had just learned that Alexander had been in an accident before. She graduated from Stanford last year. After that, she joined our lab. She has always been a smart and hardworking girl. I gently patted her head and comforted her by saying, "That's all in the past. Don't be too sad." After the lecture, I stayed at the Research Institute for a whole month. Because the experiment was at a critical moment, it couldn't do without people. When the experiment was finally completed, I left work early. I hadn't even reached the entrance when I heard a commotion. "Let me in. I am Professor Alexander's wife. Why shouldn't I be allowed in?" A voice from a woman, both familiar and unfamiliar, came through. Emily was no longer as gentle as usual. She said coldly, "Professor Alexander never mentioned having a family." Then she questioned, "This is a national institution. Sophia, you come here to cause trouble every few days. What exactly do you want if you don't leave? We'll have no choice but to call the police." Sophia tied her hair up. She wore a blue long dress. She looked gentler and more mature than before. After Emily drove the people away, I turned around and saw her. I was startled. Professor Alexander. The girl's hands were tightly clenched at her sides. She appeared very nervous. I smiled and said, "According to the rules, outsiders are not allowed inside. You did a great job. Thank you for your hard work during this time. What do you want to eat for lunch? It's on me." Emily finally sighed in relief. She saw that I was still staring in the direction Sophia left. She lowered her head. The next day after work, as soon as I stepped out, I saw Sophia with a now taller Ethan. Ethan excitedly ran towards me, shouting, "Dad." But he didn't jump into my arms directly. Instead, he tightly grasped my right hand with both of his small hands. After that, I cautiously looked at Sophia. "Husband, where have you been these past 2 years? I couldn't find you anywhere." Tears shimmered in Sophia's eyes. I sighed and said, "Let's find a convenient place to chat. Emily is watching us from behind. It seems she has something to say, but in the end she said nothing." We arrived at the restaurant. I let the waiter take Ethan to eat first, and specifically mentioned his dietary restrictions. After arranging all of this, I turned to Sophia and said, "When are you free?" Sophia's expression changed suddenly. She remembered that day when she got home, finding the house completely empty. In the end, she saw a divorce agreement on the bedside. Alexander left her a letter. It simply said one sentence, "To give you freedom." She searched the entire house and found that Alexander hadn't taken his most cherished books and trophies. He only took a few everyday clothes. "The agreement you left behind. I have already torn it up. I will not get a divorce." "Alexander, have you forgotten that we promised to live happily together for the rest of our lives? I even gave birth to Ethan for you. Can you bear to let him grow up without a father?" Sophia saw how seriously I was just advising. She must think I couldn't bear to be apart from the child. I let out a cold laugh. Didn't you also have a child with Benjamin? The dad Ethan mentions at school isn't me. Sophia was taken aback for a moment. Then she smiled and said, I understand you're feeling jealous, but I didn't have a child with him. That pregnancy was just an accident. Once I found out, I quickly took care of it. The one I've always loved is you. That day I was drunk. Benjamin is somewhat similar to you, even though I'm with him, in my heart. I'm always thinking of you. Sophia tightly grasped my arm. Her face was full of regret. She wasn't wrong. I indeed didn't notice these details before the surgery. Looking back now, Benjamin's style of dressing was really similar to mine before the accident. He both hated and couldn't help but imitate me. I calmly looked at Sophia. There was no expression on my face. Go ahead. About my feelings for you. They have faded in the daily indifference. They are already gone. You only admire that spirited Alexander. Once he becomes ordinary and slow to react, you lose interest. Sophia quickly denied it. No, no. What I care about is you yourself. I don't want to be entangled with her anymore. But I no longer like you now. Sophia, I don't believe it. We've been together for 10 years. Have you fallen for someone else? Is it that female assistant? Sophia's gaze suddenly became sharp. I don't quite understand her words. What are you talking about? She was very angry when she drove me away earlier. Seeing you walk with me today, she almost cried. She must have some bad thoughts about you. Has she been saying bad things about me in front of you? Sophia became more and more excited as she spoke. I didn't argue with her anymore. I turned and left. The next few days, Sophia started picking me up from the research institute every day again. Just like when she was pursuing me back then, she always accompanied me to class. In the evenings, she waited for me at the lab's entrance. I hardly paid attention to her. Later, I simply moved into the research institute. I didn't even give her a chance to meet until I had to go to a university to give a lecture. That's when I stepped out of the research institute's gates again. Standing in the center of the podium, the seats were filled with teachers and students. Professor Alexander is really handsome. He is not only talented, but also very good-looking. Teacher Alexander is handsome. Humanities students attend physics lectures just for him. He is the smartest among the handsome guys, and the most handsome among the geniuses. The students whispered among themselves in their seats. The young kids admire those who are both smart and handsome the most. Emily stood to the side. Her gaze fell on Professor Alexander at the podium. He was wearing a black shirt. It made his skin appear even fairer. The blue veins on the back of his hand were clearly visible. His fingers were long and elegant. Everyone usually praises Professor Alexander for his immense talent. Today, Emily realized he was also very handsome. Her face turned red after the lecture ended. Someone blocked my way. I looked up. It was Benjamin. Alexander, you really are tenacious, like an indestructible rat. You managed to crawl back again. Sophia left me. Why is it always someone trying to take everything away from me? Why do you keep appearing in front of me? Benjamin suddenly pulled out a dagger. He lunged at me with it. The scene instantly became chaotic. The students screamed in fright at the sudden situation. Emily rushed over immediately. She stood in front of me. Professor Alexander, be careful. Benjamin raised the knife. He was about to strike, but was kicked away. The bodyguards quickly subdued Benjamin. I had Emily turn around. I checked her carefully. After confirming she wasn't hurt, I gently tapped her forehead. Why did you rush over? In a situation like this, you should have run back immediately. Emily touched her forehead and said, I forgot that the director arranged bodyguards for Professor Alexander. I was a bit worried just now, because my research involves the military industry. It has a high value. To avoid accidents, the institute specially applied to the state and arranged 4 plainclothes bodyguards for me, Alexander. I won't let you off easily. Why? Why have I put in so much effort? Yet I'm still just a lecturer. Well, you have everything, to be honest. The car accident 7 years ago was actually planned by me, he said with a smile. That guy didn't handle things well. He almost hit Sophia. You're lucky you weren't hurt. Benjamin is not yet 30 this year. He hasn't made any significant academic achievements yet. It's not uncommon for someone his age to still be a lecturer. He always likes to compete with others. In the end, he was the only one hurt. I said coldly. Thank you for admitting it yourself. Attempted murder and hiring someone to kill. I thought this matter was already behind us. But then rumors about the physicist abandoning his wife and children resurfaced online. In less than 2 hours, the authorities came out to clarify. They even released a video of Sophia apologizing at a press conference a year ago. This time, the netizens reacted strongly because I have reappeared in public compared to the anonymous state a year ago. Now, I have become an important figure contributing to the country. Sophia's company has finally returned to normal operations. This time, however, it faced a massive withdrawal of funds. Ultimately, it declared bankruptcy. I saw her again. It was in the courtroom where Benjamin was sentenced. Benjamin was sentenced to life in prison on multiple charges. At the courthouse entrance, Sophia called out to me with a pale face. I know you don't want to see me again. This is the last time. I'm really sorry. I didn't expect him to be so ruthless towards you. I hope you can always be happy. If you have time, come visit Ethan. He keeps mentioning you. Sophia handed me the signed divorce agreement with a forced smile on her face. I nodded. Say it, goodbye, farewell. The one I once loved deeply. Since then, I have never stepped into the halls of marriage again. Instead, I devoted all my energy to physical research. Emily grew from an assistant to an independent female physicist. When we worked together, she always reminded me to eat on time. She took great care of me. She is never married. Colleagues wanted to set her up with someone. Emily smiled and declined. Professor Alexander dedicated his life to science. I also want to devote myself to science. She finished speaking and playfully winked at me. Then, the atmosphere shifted. Everyone began to criticize me. Perhaps I have met someone who truly understands me. Friends who can work hard together may last longer than lovers.